And now on the line is Tom Curran, a spokesperson for Right to Die Ireland and Exit International. Tom, welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, Tom, I read two very different articles in the Irish Times this week about the legislation currently before the Oireachtas about legalising euthanasia in some form in Ireland. Could you start off by giving me a summary of where you think things stand with the legislation at the moment?
Well, the legislation has been, I suppose, a long time in coming. The original bill, which is very similar to the one that's put forward now, the original bill was put forward by John Halligan many years ago. It was defeated at its first sitting. But this one, put forward by Gino Kenny of People Beyond Profit, has in fact gone to committee stage. It was voted through at the first stage, which was it's quite surprising, but very, I suppose, warming. It is now at committee stage, and the committee has asked for submissions. The submission date closed about a fortnight ago, and they've had lots of submissions, both for and against, from people like myself and the organisations that I'm involved, but also from a lot of just ordinary citizens who would like to see a situation where people have the option if they want to end their suffering.
Okay, as I said, I read two articles in the Irish Times this week. The one on Monday or Tuesday, I believe it was. I just want to give a couple of quotes from it. Irish Palliative Medicines Consultant Association, IPM-CA Chair Dr. Fergal Toomey said in the article that every clause in the proposed legislation has significant weaknesses, and the bill is poorly constructed and leaves the population open to significant risk. And just one more quote from him. He said, "The bill as it stands is very open to significant misuse and abuse and encompasses any person in Ireland who has any chronic condition." What would you say to that, Tom?
Well, I mean, that's his opinion. There's no doubt about that. And his opinion, or their opinion, or several of the palliative care people have always been against it. So no matter what sort of bill was put forward, they would find criticism in it. The bill is largely based on several other bills that have been successfully implemented around the world, particularly the one in Oregon, which has been there now for well over 10 years. And they monitor things very well over there. And there's absolutely no sign of abuse. And the same applies to an awful lot of other countries like Canada and certain states in America, where they've brought this in as a freedom for people to make a choice. Now, of course, he's against it, and I accept that everybody is entitled to their own opinion. And if that's his opinion and the way he wants to live his life, grand. But don't impose that on other people. Give people the freedom to choose.
Okay, do you believe that every individual has the right to receive voluntary euthanasia?
Well, every individual already, since 1993, suicide has been legal here in Ireland. So it is not illegal to take your own life. So every citizen has that right already. The state provided that right to everybody in 1993. What we're saying here is that ending of a life the voluntary ending of life is always a tragedy to a certain extent. But if a person wants to make that choice and is rational, if the person knows exactly what they're doing, what they're thinking, we've already given them that right. Do that. But what we're saying is that they should be allowed a peaceful death. They should be assisted to get a peaceful death and not have to resort to some of the methods that people do. And it's as simple as that. You know, there's nothing complicated about it. It's giving a person a choice to end their suffering when they decide that they want to, but be given the assistance to make sure that they do that peacefully and painlessly.
So are you saying you want the option to be brought in for people who are actually dying anyway, or would you be in favour of it being brought in for anyone, any adult at any stage in their life, even if they're not actually in the process of dying?
Well, the bill is only there to cover people who have an illness which is very likely to lead to their death. And I say that, most people would say a terminal illness. But lots of illnesses technically are not considered terminal, but they will ultimately lead. And I mean, the one that I have a lot of experience in is MS. MS is not, by definition, a terminal illness. But it will eventually, through the symptoms that people have from MS, end up reducing a person's life in most cases. but technically it's not regarded as a terminal illness. And that's why I'm very careful about using the words that the illness will lead to their death. And that's what the bill is covering. From other people that are not ill, we've already given them the freedom to do that by legalizing suicide. It is not a crime to end your own life. So any able-bodied person, we've already given that right to. What we're talking about here is people with serious illnesses that have decided that they don't want to suffer on for the inevitable end to come. Their end is well, all our ends are inevitable. We're all going to die. There's no doubt about that. We're all going to die. But these people are possibly facing a prolonged and agonizing or difficult death. And they don't want their people around them to have to witness that as well. And this is all we're dealing with here. We've already given able-bodied people and rational people that right in 1983. Here we're saying that people who can't exercise that right themselves should be given the option of getting assistance.
So when that IPMCA chair, Dr. Fergal Toomey, said that the bill as it's currently constructed, the bill at the moment seems to encompass any person in Ireland who has any chronic condition, so he's wrong, yeah?
He's wrong in the way that the bill is worded, yes.
Okay.
Within the bill itself, it has to be an illness which is likely to lead to a person's death. Now, the illness itself may not, for instance, I'll come back to MS. A lot of people suffer with MS. It's things like they get pneumonia and they don't have the strength to fight that pneumonia because of their MS, but the MS is the cause of the pneumonia as well. And that ends up ending their life. So this is why I'm careful not to say a terminal illness like cancer.
Okay, do you believe people with serious mental illnesses should be allowed to avail of voluntary euthanasia?
It depends on how you define a mental illness, and this is one of the I suppose, the difficulties that we always get into in situations, or in talking about this situation. Not all mental illnesses mean that a person has lost the ability for rational thought. But in my opinion, the person has to be able to think rationally to make this decision for themselves, because it's not a rational decision if they can't think rationally. So some mental illnesses would be covered by it, but others, and the majority of mental illnesses would not, because in the majority of cases with mental illness, and I stand to be corrected on this, I'm sure that some psychiatrists out there would disagree with me, but I'm not a medical professional, but some mental illnesses diminish the ability to think rationally. And in that case, they would not be covered by it. The person has to be capable of rational thought and understand the decision that they're making.
Okay, are you confident, Tom, that the issues some people and organisations have with the legislation will be ironed out over the rest of the year?
Oh yes, I mean that's what this whole idea of the committee taking submissions, and the committee will now be opened up for verbal submissions as well, and it will be thought through, and any concerns that people have, the bill is quite open to amendment, so any concerns that people have will be addressed, and if there are any shortcomings in the bill, it shouldn't be that difficult to correct them.